I've done about 5 or 6 films with Rory Kennedy, and so most of the time the films were journalistic and about issues and personality bios and things like that. But this was a very different situation because it was about her family. And she's notoriously private about her family. Her father's Robert Kennedy and her mother's Ethel Kennedy. And so when she called me to say that she was going to do a film about her mother, I said, really? You're going to do a personal film? And she said, no. So I was like, okay. So she was really trying to keep this balance between the sweeping story historically, and the that so many of us, I mean, they're really public figures and they're part of all of our lives. So she was trying to find that balance between giving you an intimate portrait, and really it was like a love letter to her mother. And in that way it was very sweet and romantic, and I got a chance to do very romantic music and kind of sweeping. The hardest part of it was separating my own feelings about that time in history from what she was trying to do with the film. So it was a very interesting experience, because usually I draw on my own emotional response to things. But in this case, my emotional response was not what hers was. And so it was really interesting finding this, setting the tone and also keeping the film moving. There were certain places like the Robert Kennedy assassination that, like, it was interesting. I mean, I had some very, there were times I didn't want to do any music, but she wanted music. She wanted me to keep it from going too far. And yet, when President Kennedy was assassinated, that's where she didn't want music. So it was interesting, we had to really explore, and we did a lot of just throwing things in and trying things.
One thing that's really important to me, I love working with themes and feeling that there's this cohesive score that is part of the story arc that I build. It might be 4 notes, becomes thematic. And it's so much fun. For me, that's the funnest part, is finding a way to incorporate something that's part of the storytelling arc and has recognizable elements that are sometimes, that you just can vary in an infinite number of ways. That's the really fun part. It's like a puzzle, kind of. You just kind of dive in. You have to just take your fear and just go, it's just music. I do this all the time. It's just music. But I still get intimidated always. I mean, it's just intimidating. There's such great music out there. But then there's this thing that happens. You start working with their footage and your process, and it becomes your own. I used to be so goal-oriented, like, how do I get to the end, like you said. And then I realized, if I'm going to keep doing this till I drop, then I have to really just surrender to the process and know that this is what it's going to be. It's all about developing that relationship with who you're working with, finding the proper, finding the right tone for the film.